الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. The first of our loud salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. The third, with your loudest voices, in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamualaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Amongst the recent pieces of news to have had a major effect on the Muslim world was the news of the victory in the Miss USA contest of Rima Faqih. Rima Faqih originally comes from Lebanon and lives in Detroit, Michigan. She is 24 years old and lives in a community which is known as an Islamic community and one of the biggest in the Western world. In that when you examine the community in Detroit, Michigan, you find that many of them have lived in that area for over 30-40 years. But that many of them originally are amongst the followers of Ahlul Bayt. The Miss USA contest is one which is held every year and one which is watched by millions throughout the world. One which receives press coverage around the world. And indeed is a contest which seeks to highlight two areas in the life of the female. The first being the area of her opinions in relation to the world that surrounds her. And the second, and arguably the more important in the eyes of the competition, that being the beauty of the participant. The reason this particular contest caused much controversy was because of the fact that the woman who won the contest was a Muslim woman. And the idea is that in the Western world, a Muslim woman in many occasions would not even be seen without a headscarf, let alone enter a competition where she would be seen in provocative poses. And that's why you find that it sent shockwaves around many parts of the world and caused outrage in many Islamic circles. That how could someone who's a member of a community which claims to follow the message of the Prophet and his family be willing to reach a level where they expose their body to millions around the world? While many felt disgust at what had happened, you found that some didn't even find a problem with it within the Detroit community itself. There was one person who famously came out and said that there are women in Detroit who wear less than what Rima was wearing, and that it may even help certain women understand how important it is to lose weight. Unfortunately, such a person had an opinion which leaves a lot to be desired. Yet the reality is that it made us and makes us reassess our position on women in Islam in the 21st century. Because there really needs to be a re-examination of the position of women in Islamic thought, especially in the position of women in the Western world in Islamic thought today. Because when a 24-year-old Muslim woman of an origin, of a family that belongs to the school of Ahlul Bayt is willing to reach a level where she exposes her body and is proud of what she's done, it needs for us to examine how we reach such a situation. And of course, such a situation is not something unusual. Why? Because the fact that when Muslims moved into the Western world, there was bound to be situations where some of their youths would adopt stances which would be seen as untraditional, which would be seen as being out of the norm of their religion. Of course, when you adopt a stance that's untraditional, it does not necessarily mean that the stance is a bad one. But in this situation, it was seen that the stance which she adopted left a lot to be desired. But what it highlighted was that in the Muslim world today, many women, and indeed of the younger generation, find a gaping hole in terms of their role within society. What is it that drove a young woman like Rima Faqih to entering the Miss World contest? That of course is something which has to be examined. As in, what is it that a follower of Ahlul Bayt could reach a level where she was willing to enter such a contest? I'd like to examine that in tonight's examination. Why? Because there were two camps who emerged. One camp which emerged said that this lady is an insult to all of us, that this lady should be vilified, she should be removed from our communities. That camp is unfortunately a negative camp. Why? Because vilifying someone or insulting them is not going to change the situation. As in, you vilify a girl like Rima Faqih, or you insult her, or you abuse her, is not going to change the situation. The second camp said, no, we should reassess what is the way we should advise someone like Rima. Because Rima was brave enough to come out in public and show what she really believes in. Whereas we may have many who believe in such a thing, but are too scared to come out publicly with it. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you go into the cyber world today, you may actually find there are many more Rima Faqihs, but that they are too scared to come out with their real feelings. So let's seek to examine the position in tonight's analysis in a number of stages. Number one, can you force a woman in Islam to be religious? Number two, when we come to someone like Rima Faqih and we look at her position, is someone who doesn't wear hijab, are they a bad person or not? Number three, what reforms should take place in the middle of the position of women in Islamic societies today? Number four, which great woman existed in history who we can learn contemporary lessons from? And which contemporary woman of the 20th century can our woman take as examples? And number five, what was the statement of one of the most famous dictators of the 20th century about a great woman who came 1,000 years before him? Let's examine this and try to examine the topic in depth. Can I force a Muslim woman to be religious? Is a question many ask in the world today. Both Muslims and non-Muslims. Many come forward and ask the question that, can I now force a woman to be religious in Islam? No, you cannot. Of course you can't. Does that mean it doesn't happen? Oh no, it does. As in certain villages in so-called Islamic countries, we do have a mentality where people force their daughters to become religious. What do I mean? I mean they don't give their daughters a choice or a freedom to express their opinions. If their daughter doesn't follow what the religion teaches, they are willing to hit their daughter, willing to expel her out of their houses, willing to say to her that you are not part of our tribe anymore. As in, until today in certain so-called Muslim countries, we have a tribal mentality, not a human mentality. We have this tribal system that still exists, where our daughters aren't given the freedom to express themselves. On the contrary, they are told either you follow our way or you are excommunicated from the tribe. Yes, in certain village mentalities we do have this idea that Muslim women are forced to become religious, whereas the ideal of the religion of Islam was the opposite. What do I mean? The ideal of the religion of Islam was that you can't force your daughter to become religious. No, your daughter has her own free will. Theologically, the school of Ahlul Bayt would always espouse the idea that you as a human being have been given free will. You can make your own decisions about religiosity. You want to become a believer, you can become a believer. You want to